In the last video, we looked at some general features of all amino acids. In this video, we are going to focus on the so-called 20 common or 20 standard amino acids that exist in nature and form the building blocks of the majority of proteins that exist in nature. Let's take a closer look. Remember from the last video that the term amino acid refers to a molecule that has an amino group, hence the name amino in the term amino acid, and it also has a carboxy group or a carboxylic acid group, COOH, at this end of the molecule. We refer to that as a carboxy group, which is short for carboxylic acid. Hence the term fits here of amino for the amine group and acid referring to the fact that there's a carboxylic acid. We also learned in the last video that at typical pH present within most living systems of 7 or around 7, that this nitrogen atom is actually present as a cation because the nitrogen is basic. It picks up a proton from the environment to become NH3+. Similarly, the acidic carboxylic acid group loses this proton here in blue in the upper right corner to become an oxygen anion, and the molecule in total is referred to as a Zwitter ion because the nitrogen has a positive charge and the oxygen over here has a negative charge, and molecules that have oppositely charged atoms within the same compound are referred to as Zwitter ions. Now looking at the 20 so-called standard or common amino acids, we see these spelled out here on this nice chart. In this chart, there are a few different things that I want to draw your attention to. First off, all of the 20 common amino acids are shown here as their different structures, working our way through the molecules here. With these structures, we see a one-letter abbreviation for each one shown here, 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 and here. So each of the 20 amino acids in that circle that comes right after its name has its one-letter abbreviation. This is important information to be able to interpret because later on we are going to be looking at the sequences of proteins, that is the composition and order of the individual amino acids that make up the protein. And in order to do that, generally, those are written out as their one-letter abbreviations. And so we will need to know what structure each abbreviation goes back to, so that if you see the letter capital W, you will know that refers to a tryptophan residue shown here in the middle left of your screen. Additionally, these molecules also go by three-letter abbreviations, which are sometimes used to represent the individual amino acids, or when listed in a series of three-letter abbreviations, represent a string of amino acids that are chemically bonded together to form ultimately a protein. So ALA here that I'm highlighting in kind of the upper left-hand corner represents the three-letter code for alanine. Glycine, GLY, isoleucine, ILE, leucine, LEU, and so on and so forth. And hence, when you see these three-letter abbreviations, you should also be able to link those back to what their structure is. So in general, we will see that these molecules appear based on two different possible abbreviations, a one-letter or a three-letter abbreviation, and you should be proficient at applying the information of either of those types of abbreviation. Now let's take a look at some of the other key definitions, specifically what we see along the top of the chart here. In each case, the color of the circle around the amino acid represents the chemical structure type, where they are classified in this chart according to whether they are aliphatic, where aliphatic, we have seen that term before, but it's perhaps been a little while, refers to a nonpolar alkyl group attached. Aromatic refers to an aromatic ring as the R group. Acidic refers to an acidic R group bonded to the molecule. Basic refers to a basic group. Hydroxylic refers to the molecule having an OH group or a hydroxy group. Sulfur-containing refers to the sulfur-containing R groups. And amidic refers to structures that have an amide linkage present within the amino acid. Let's unpack a few of these or give some examples. So aliphatic amino acids include all the ones circled in red. So alanine, for example, is an aliphatic amino acid because when we look for the alpha carbon, that is the carbon adjacent to the carbonyl, that would be the carbon right here that I've put a green star on. It's the carbon that is sandwiched between the nitrogen and the carbonyl carbon, so that's our alpha position right there. The R group is what comes off of that. So here, the R group, which I will highlight here in green, is a nonpolar alkyl group in alanine. It's a methyl group to be specific, and therefore it would be classified as an aliphatic amino acid. Now, next up in the lineup, if we look at these aliphatic amino acids, we could come over to isoleucine as our next example. For isoleucine, this carbon that I put the green star on here is the one that's the alpha position because it's adjacent to the carbonyl and it's sandwiched between the carbonyl and the nitrogen. And the R group attached to that is what determines and differentiates these different amino acids. And we see that also has an alkyl group bonded to it here. Specifically, we'd call that a sec-butyl group in isoleucine. And so that makes this isoleucine also fit the category of aliphatic. Likewise, with leucine, our alpha carbon is right here where I've put my green star. And the R group bonded to that, the variable group that distinguishes this from the other amino acids, is there. It is an isobutyl group. And therefore, that isobutyl group, very nonpolar alkyl group, that makes this categorized as aliphatic. Glycine is also categorized as aliphatic. Its alpha position is right here, right there, and that is a molecule that has an R group that's just a hydrogen atom there, and so we consider that to be a relatively nonpolar group as well. And glycine is unique because it is the only achiral of the 20 standard amino acids. So in other words, it's the only one that has no stereocenter. It has no chiral center, in other words. And so it is the only amino acid that we would not call an L amino acid. All of the others are the L configuration. This one has no configuration because it has no stereocenter, it has no carbon with 4 different groups bonded to it. Now, our aromatic amino acids are going to be all the ones where when we look at the structure of the R group, it has at least one aromatic ring. Those are going to be highlighted in green here in the middle left of your screen, and we can see in each of those cases there's an aromatic ring here, here, and here, making those categorized as aromatic. The acidic R groups are shown in orange right here, aspartic acid and glutamic acid, and looking at these can be a little bit confusing because as you take a look at the structure, you'll see what looks like 2 different carboxy type groups there. We recognize which one is part of the requirement for all amino acids as the group here at the right-hand end of the molecule because that is the group that is adjacent to the alpha position shown with a star that has the nitrogen bonded to it. So we recognize this as the position where the R group, the variable group on these molecules, comes off. And that variable group, as we see over here, is a CH2COO group. Similarly with glutamic acid, the R group is right here coming off as a CH2CH2COO group. And we recognize these as acidic groups because they have a carboxylic acid group in addition to the required COOH or COO negative group that is in all of the amino acids. So these have an extra carboxylic acid group, and hence we refer to these as our acidic amino acids. Our basic amino acids are here next door to the right. Those are circled in light blue. And those are referred to as basic because you'll notice that they have amine groups in their R group. So looking at each of these, we recognize that the alpha position is here because it's adjacent to the carboxy group. And then the R group coming off of that would be this group here, and that has a couple of nitrogen atoms, making that a basic group. Likewise, over here, our R group is what I'm highlighting in green, and that in arginine has a couple of amine groups there as well, making it basic. Our hydroxylic groups are serine and threonine, both of which have an OH group present within the molecule, an alcohol functional group, in other words, for both of these. That's why they're circled in pink. Sulfur-containing amino acids have their special properties. That includes cysteine with an SH and methionine with sulfur bonded to a methyl group there. Remember that line represents a methyl group in this line angle formula. And then amide amino acids refer to situations where if we look at the alpha position carbon right there and look at the R group that is next to it here in the lower right hand corner of your screen, you will see that there is an amide group there, and carbonyl directly bonded to an NH2. And same thing with glutamine, our R group here at the end of it, has an amide group, and that's why we call those amide amino acids. So these terms that we see here represented by the different colored circles tell us information about the structures of these molecules. And this is important because when these individual amino acids link together to form ultimately proteins with elaborate three-dimensional structures, it's going to be the identities of these different R groups that drive what the structure of the protein is, and it's ultimately that structure of the protein that drives the function of the protein. So at the core of it, the identities of these standard 20 amino acids are the basis for a huge array of functions in life of proteins. Now, there is one additional point that I should bring up with regard to the 20 standard amino acids, and that is, over here we see essential versus non-essential amino acids. What do we mean when we say something is essential versus non-essential? Zooming out just a bit there to give us some elbow room to write, when we say that an amino acid is an essential amino acid, and I'll abbreviate the amino acid part of this as AA, essential amino acids are ones that the human body cannot synthesize. So essential amino acids are ones that we have to obtain through the diet because we cannot synthesize those from scratch. And it's important to keep these in mind because these amino acids are ones where health will definitely dwindle if they are not obtained in sufficient quantities through the diet, through either supplements or through the selection of foods that we are eating. Non-essential amino acids, in contrast, are ones that humans are able to produce biologically, and we don't have to have those in our diet in order to have adequate amounts of them. There are a total, if you count them up here, of 9 essential amino acids. Those are, again, the ones that have dotted circles around them. So that would include isoleucine, leucine, valine, histidine, tryptophan. So maybe it's not a bad idea to eat some turkey on Thanksgiving because turkey is a known source of tryptophan. Phenylalanine, lysine, threonine, and methionine are our 9 essential amino acids. And you can interpret that from this chart based on the ones that have the dotted circles around them. An additional term that ties in directly to this discussion is the term complete protein. A complete protein is a protein source that includes all 9 of the essential amino acids. In other words, by eating a complete protein, one can obtain all of the amino acids that are essential to be obtained in the diet, and hence can maintain good health technically by eating just whatever one source of complete protein someone wanted to eat. An example of a common complete protein is a substance called casein. That's CASEIN, also known as milk protein. And that is why milk proteins are a common source of protein supplements and commonly used in protein powders and ready-to-drink protein shakes and things of that sort. And in general, many sources of complete proteins or these essential amino acids are things like fish, eggs, meat, and dairy. As a result, people that are strict vegans do have to be careful to closely watch their diet to ensure that they are obtaining all of the essential amino acids through their vegan diet. If you frequent health food stores, you may have seen containers of powders of so-called BCAAs, as shown here in this image with some weightlifting equipment. BCAA stands for branched chain amino acids. So the B there, branched, C chain, AA referring to amino acids. Why is it the case that branched chain amino acids are purified, bottled up, and sold as supplements? Well, the reason that those are sold as supplements and reported to improve the ability for people to bodybuild and gain muscle is because the branched chain amino acids are a subset of the essential amino acids. And so by consuming these through these supplements in large quantities, it's thought that those may help to promote muscle growth and development. So looking at our amino acid chart, we can use our previous knowledge of chemical structures to map out here what represents our branched chain amino acids. Remember that when we were doing IUPAC nomenclature previously, we looked at branches as one of the features that are common in molecules, and taking a look at our chart here of amino acids and trying to pick out the branched chain amino acids out of this, or at least evaluating some of them. Taking a look at isoleucine has the dotted box around it indicating to us that it is an essential amino acid, and taking a glance at the R group specifically, because that's what's unique to each individual amino acid, we see the R group here is this 3-carbon chain, 1, 2, 3 carbons off of the alpha position there, and at the first one there's a branch coming off, and hence isoleucine represents an example of a BCAA, a branched chain amino acid. Likewise, leucine is also a branched chain amino acid because it has also a 3-carbon chain, and the difference is the methyl group has moved over 1 position. So it's still a branched chain because we have a 3-carbon chain and we can't trace through this extra additional carbon without lifting our pencil, meaning that it is a branch. Valine at the far right top of your screen, also an example of a molecule that has a branched chain amino acid because it has that isopropyl group here, and we have a 2-carbon chain there off of the alpha position and a branch there at position 1 of that 2-carbon chain. So these are some of our branched chain amino acids. These are the ones that we would recognize as being present in this mixture of so-called BCA. And now, in the next videos, what we will do is apply the information we've learned here about amino acids to start to look at some of the structures and functions of proteins within the body and look at how those proteins are synthesized from these individual amino acids through chemical reactions that should look familiar to ones that we have learned about in earlier segments.